Welcome back to Boomer's Playground. Welcome back to Boomer's Playground. And today I'm going to be answering the question I've been seeing a lot on both Reddit and Discord and pretty much just anywhere you look is it still worth learning to code? And so I want to tackle this from a couple different avenues because depending on where you are, the question's different. So if you are asking right now, you don't really know, you've never tried to learn to code, and you're like, hey, is it still worth it? The first thing you have to understand is you're not going to be applying in today's market. Realistically, you're looking at a year and a half to 2 years. Um, Obviously, there are people who do it quicker. I've seen people do it quicker. We all know a friend who's done it in 4 days and is working at Facebook now or whatever. But as someone who runs a local group and have mentored people, the honest to God reality is if you have other responsibilities, you're looking at like a year and a half, 2 years. So I don't think the market's going to change a whole lot from today, but that's just something to think about is you're not applying in today's market, which at the current moment is good because the market's not the best. Also, I have a couple notes here, so if you see me looking down, it's so that I make sure to hit my pinpoints. Otherwise, I'm going to ramble on for 45 minutes and you guys are going to block me and report me and stuff. So that's the first thing. Now, if you started 2-ish years ago, 3-ish years ago, and you're now applying for your first job, I'm sorry. Like nobody can tell the future, right? But this is just an atrocious market to be applying for jobs in, especially as your first job. They are still out there. I see people getting them, but it's a lot of work. And so, the couple things, if you feel like you're ready, and you're getting no love from interviews, you're not getting any, or you're not even passing, the first round. I think the first thing a lot of people don't ever think to do is honest to God step back and see if you're actually ready to be applying, because we just brought on a mid-level developer and I was a part of the interviewing process, and we had some people with experience that I don't even know how they got their job or how they had 2 years of experience. Like we weren't even entertaining them as juniors. So I think that's something, and I did the same thing when I first started applying. I applied way too early. I was like, oh man, the market sucks. Oh, recruiters suck. When in actuality, I was the one that sucked. I just wasn't ready to be applying for jobs yet. So if you've learned for the past, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, however long it's been, and you're not getting any love with interviews or getting any, or not passing the first couple entry level rounds, you gotta find somebody who's in the industry. Find a Discord server. Find somebody on LinkedIn. Talk to friends. Find out if you should even really be applying. The reason I say that is, let's say you think you are. You've done what everybody's told you to do. But then you come to me. You know me. We're friends, right? And you're like, hey, what do you think? And I do a little mock interview with you, and I'm just like, yeah, you're just not ready to apply yet. So now instead of spending 7 months applying and getting frustrated and, being mad at whatever you are going to be mad at, you can take that same 6 months and you can progress yourself. Because at that point, if that person tells you you're not ready, you can follow up with, okay, well, what am I missing? And then you can kind of fill in those gaps to be more ready to apply. I can't think of the right way to say it, so forgive me. So that's the first thing I would think of if you're applying and you're getting no love. Now, let's say you come to me and I'm like, yeah, dude, you're totally ready to apply. It's a rough market. Junior jobs, everybody gets told just apply to anything. So, there's 1,000 applicants for, a junior job. We bring in 10 of them. None of them really did well. And it's expensive to hire. And it's exhausting. And, the boss still has things that they need to do. So, unfortunately, even if you are the best candidate, you might get passed over. That's just the way the world is right now. So, so the first two things. So, if you're asking, should you start to learn to code? Well, you're not going to apply in this market, so whatever. And then if you're applying now because you have learned for the past couple of years, heed those first little bits. Networking is going to be the best. It's tough to network if you don't already know somebody or if you don't have like meetups in your area, because just like I know a lot of people will say to like cold outreach on LinkedIn and stuff, but like if we don't truly know each other or if I don't meet you at like a meetup, I mean it's not truly a network. I'm probably not going to pass you along to my boss because I really don't know you, and if I pass too many people along to them and they're all garbage, like they're going to start looking at me poorly. So yeah. Now, with the person who has never learned to code and is asking that question now, um, couple things I would ask myself. So, in 2 years, if you don't have a developer job, would it have been a waste of your time? If the answer to that is yes, then no. Do not put a lot of time and effort into this. Keep it as a hobby. If in 2 years you get a developer job, but it's regular pay and it's not fully remote, you have to go into the office. If that's a deal breaker, keep it as a hobby. I bring the remote thing up because I see it a lot. People from third world countries or countries that are not quite as prosperous as Germany, America, the first world ones. They want to learn to develop and they're going to get an American job, and it's not that easy. There are a lot of companies, and myself even. So I have a little story about me applying as well that'll dig a little deep or dive a little deeper into this. But a lot of companies, even if you are full remote, there are a lot of them that you still have to have a residence in a specific state, and it's for tax purposes. So, people will be in the comments below saying, well, just go 1099. A lot of big shops won't go 1099 unless you are amazing. And if you're just learning, you're just not likely going to be that person. So if remote is like the main reason you're like, this is the job for me. If the deal breaker is you get a job and you have to go in somewhere, you have to move, keep it as a hobby. Don't spend tons of time learning this if that's the only reason you want this, because I think most of you are going to be disappointed. So I have a coworker. He left the company that I'm currently working for. Better pay, other stuff. They're full remote. They have one office in the whole country. And even though he's full remote and there's not even an office for him to go into, he still needs to reside within one of 7 states in America to be an employee of that company. So, very, very common. When all the tech layoffs started happening, I got concerned. Of the 40 people on the developer team between the 3 smaller teams that we have, I would say I'm middle of the pack. You wouldn't miss me getting rid of me in terms of coding. So, the first round of layoffs popped off and I was a little concerned. So I did start applying, and I've continued to apply a little bit. It's always good to just like, hone your skill set. It's also good to have 6 people that are interested in you than waiting until I get laid off to try and find those 6 people. So I'm just kind of like thinking ahead. And then a key part to that too is when you don't take the job, do it respectfully. Be like, hey, I'm really sorry. Let's keep in touch. Something might change, whatever the case is. But I've been applying and I'm running into the same First off, I have absolutely zero interest in leaving the company that I'm at now. So you would almost have to double my salary and give me full remote anywhere in the world for me to even consider it. I love my team too much. I know that my team loves me, the company doesn't, but the team does. And I have no interest in actually leaving. So as I'm applying to these things, I'm finding some remote ones, and they'll be full remote. And I'll get on the phone, we'll talk. And then, when it comes down to it, they'll be like, oh, well, you've got to live in X, Y, or Z. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I don't have to go into an office, but kind of weird. Whatever. With that said, middle of COVID, and I think anybody who even has worked a developer job would say the same thing. I was getting 40 messages every couple days. I could have had 30 interviews and probably a dozen offers, but from those 40 messages. Nowadays, I still get about the same amount of messages. Half of them are spam and scams. The other half, I'll get 7 interviews out of, and I'll get 1 or 2 offers. So, you'll see a lot of people saying they have experience, they still can't find work. And one thing to take into consideration with that is, what's their experience? Like I said, we were looking for a mid-level developer. We required 2 years of experience. This was an actual requirement, not the junior ones where they're like, have 10 years of experience with a language that's 5 years old. This was like a true mid-level. You needed to work for somebody for at least 2 years. We had people coming in with 4 or 5 years of experience that couldn't handle basic JavaScript questions. So there's a lot of things to think about when you're reading these posts. Alternately, I have a friend of a friend who got laid off from Google, and he asked if he could come to one of my meetups. I said sure. I was like, you're gonna be the smartest person there, so I don't know what you're gonna get from it, but we'd love to have you. Could you give a talk? And so he did, and whatever. Afterwards, I was like, hey man, I'm like, let's go grab some drinks, get some food. Like, on me, I appreciate you coming out and talking to everybody. And we were just, chopping it up. And again, and I don't even want to say even for me, but like, it is tough even with experience. Right now is a bad time to be applying for jobs. It's not impossible, but it is pretty tough even with good experience. So I'm talking to this guy, and I was just like, you seriously can't find work? I was like, and like, I'm a problem solver. I'm a people person. And so like, I want to deep dive. What's the actual problem? And so I was like, dude, what's going on? Like, are you failing the coding interviews? Like, and I was just asking him. And while he wasn't getting, offer after offer after offer after offer, he was doing about 40% with the interviews that he had, but he was expecting Google compensation. And to get that level of compensation, I mean, there's only 5 or 6 companies that can provide that for you. And so his issue wasn't that he couldn't get a job. His issue was he couldn't get a job with the salary package that he requested or wanted. And so that's another thing to think about when you see these guys on Reddit that are like, oh yeah, 6-year, Facebook, Apple, and it's like I can't even find work. And it's like, okay, well, can you actually not find work, or can you just not find work that you're willing to get? Like, or is the compensation package not enough for you, right? So now, don't get me wrong. I'm making, $100,000 plus a year, right? I would turn down a $50,000 offer, right? Like, that's ridiculous. But a lot of these guys, I don't even want to say a lot because I really don't know that many, but the couple that I know, they're getting offers, they're getting good salary offers. It's the other stuff that they're not getting that a regular company just can't, right? They just won't do, or they just can't do. So like, American Express is big in this city. That guy from Google got an offer from them, and they offered him a pretty respectable salary, but no stock. And it's just like, that's why he said no. And so, while I'm not saying it's easy to get a job with experience, um, it's not impossible. And just you almost have to think about the post that you're reading programmatically, right? Like, okay, he's not getting a job. Well, why is he not getting a job? Is he, you know, does he live in an area where there's no work? Is he bad coder? Is he failing, the what's the one? I can't even think of the word now. The one where it's like how you are as a person, like that. That first round where they're like, oh, what do you like to do? And they make sure they're like a good fit, not a crazy person. Maybe they're failing that. You really have to try and figure out, like, where's the breakdown? And guess what? There are a lot of people that just aren't getting interviews. So I'm not trying to say, like, oh, hey, those guys were all lying. People are not getting interviews. With qualified experience, there are people that aren't getting interviews. So I'm not trying to say that all that's a lie. But I am trying to say that it's not quite that cut and dry. So kind of keep that in mind when you're reading these posts, right? Yeah, I mean, those are kind of the biggest things. If you're asking, should you learn to code, ask yourself those first couple questions. In 2 years, 2.5 years, if you get a developer job, but you're only making a little bit more than you are now, and you've got to go into the office, is that a deal breaker? If it is, probably I would still treat it as a hobby, but I wouldn't invest a whole lot of time into it. Does it have to be super high paying? Do you have to be remote? Those kind of things, because even like super qualified people sometimes can't get those, right? So if those are like the big reasons for you to get into this, you might want to just dip your toes in. I wouldn't spend every night, every weekend learning this if those are the only things that really matter, or if those are, I shouldn't say only things that matter, if those are deal breakers. Like, if you don't get those things, if you don't get those things and you feel like you failed, keep this as a hobby, dip your toe in. For people applying now who don't have any experience, I'm so sorry. You didn't luck out this time. I don't know what to tell you. Your best bet's networking. Again, don't just spam people on LinkedIn. Sure, we've all seen that article post where they're like, I emailed the CEO and said, hey, please hire me. And he did. That's the minority. That is not a common thing to happen. I'm sorry. So find local meetup groups. Find people who are actually in the industry. Network with them. If you can have one of them hand over your resume to their boss, that puts you on the top of the 1,000 applicant list just right out of the gate. And even if you're maybe not as qualified as some of the people in that list, you still have a better chance because me or whoever said, like, hey, let's get this guy. And then also, as you're reading all these posts about people who can't find work, no, there are people who can't find work legitimately. But there's also a cross-section of people who can't find work with the compensation package they demand. And while I'm not saying they're demanding $1 million, but they're probably demanding more than a company is willing to offer. So that's kind of how I feel about the is it still worth learning to code? If you guys like hearing me just rant on about these kind of thoughts that I have with all of this, let me know. I feel like I'm not unique, but I'm like kind of unique in this world where like I'm very social. I'm a very social person and I'm a coder. A lot of times those two things don't really go together too well. So I do feel like I get a kind of interesting perspective when I'm talking to people who are trying to get into this field, because I do kind of see both sides. And I try and look at them separately. Sometimes I do. I'm sure sometimes I don't. But if you guys like hearing my thoughts on these things, let me know. Let me know what other things you would like me to kind of go over or talk about. Other than that, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the comment section below. Otherwise, Keep on coding, and I'll see you guys in the next one.